I think any agricultural business would tell you that the permanent labour market is brutal. We're talking about refinement of the primary production system now. I don't have the trainers or I don't have the supervisors. Work it out. It's your job. Australian fresh produce producers are under intense margin pressure. It's not a new narrative. People have said this on and off for many years, but speaking to and working with a lot of the bigger and sophisticated businesses in the industry, people are saying that it's more acute than it's ever been. The reasons for it, a number. Everyone's well aware of the cost of living pressure that Australian consumers are under, and simplistically, interest rates and high mortgage repayments for a lot of families are eroding their disposable income, and then inflation that's affected virtually everything that consumers buy has meant that money left at the end of the week is very tight. Because consumers are so sensitized to price, the retailers are super sensitized to price. None of the retailers want to give up revenue. None of the retailers want to give up market share. So they'd all like to be famous for having the best value fresh food offer. And in order for the retailers to maintain a margin and be seen by the consumer to have great prices, they've got to buy right. So that price pressure has got to land somewhere, and it lands on our fresh food producers. Now, it's not just a domestic situation. Exports every bit as challenging. Looking at the trade statistics, at best, our produce export volume's flat. So this is in fresh fruit and vegetables, excluding nuts. We're not growing the volume that we're exporting. Competing in international markets is very, very challenging. So our Southern Hemisphere competitors, generally speaking, have the same access to the genetics that we have, same access to technology. The flow of skills flowing across international borders through the likes of skill migration is a very, very real thing. And in a lot of cases, those Southern Hemisphere producers have got a lot lower labour cost. So it's intense in all of those international markets. And frankly, the clean and green spin that has been the backbone of a lot of our marketing just isn't enough to cut it. So domestic markets are challenging, export markets are challenging, and the inputs going into all of these horticultural businesses have increased pretty dramatically. Pandemic obviously disrupted supply chains a great deal. The Ukraine conflict caused all sorts of chaos, particularly affecting chemical and fertilizer prices. And then, of course, our labour market has been tipped on its head in the last 4 to 5 years, all of which have resulted in higher unit costs for all of those things. So price pressure down, input costs up, a lot of pressure on businesses. Quite a lot of the businesses wouldn't have made a genuine profit in 4 or 5 years. That starts to slow down expenditure on new plant and equipment, maintenance of existing plant equipment, infrastructure. Now your operating costs are rising because the equipment's not quite what it used to be, and that discretionary funding for innovation, the next change to try and keep up with automation and mechanisation, there's not a lot of capital there to deploy for that. So all of those things together have made things extremely challenging. Traditionally, a lot of businesses have looked to scale as being perhaps a silver bullet for keeping their cost of production under control. In some cases, greater volume, greater scale does allow people to bring unit costs down. However, if they're not managing to control the quality of what they're producing, or they're oversupplying the markets that are available to them, they can actually just drive up their cost of production, and or crash the markets that they're selling into. I think the businesses that are looking really hard at the data and understanding what the opportunity are trying to produce more premium quality product without increasing the area under production. So we're talking about refinement of the primary production system now. No more area, no more units of production, but a higher pack out. And generally speaking, there's opportunity to do that in every horticultural business that I've looked at. The workforce piece is enormous. Businesses don't magically improve themselves; their people do, and not all of the permanent roles within these businesses are equally important. So, in a very tough permanent labour market where wages generally and expectations generally have gone up, businesses need to understand very clearly what roles create the most value in their business and make sure that they disproportionately apply effort, energy, and potentially salary packaging in order to get the right talent into the roles that matter most. Is that a little bit ambiguous? In my experience, the roles that matter most in these horticultural businesses aren't white collar. Do we need a competent CFO? Yes, we do. Do we need a competent QA and compliance person? Yes, we do. Where's the value created? Generally, they're blue collar jobs. They're the grower, they're the irrigation manager, they're the irrigation technicians, they're the key operations people. Where are we going to drive crop improvement? Where are we going to drive waste out of the operations? They're those roles that businesses need to get right. And then there's this beast that is seasonal workforce, and it's quite simplistic to look at two quotes for labour or two sets of rates for labour, and in a high margin pressure environment like what we're in now, the temptation is that price per unit looks better. I'll take $35 an hour over $38, $39 an hour every day of the week, and I hand on heart, I think I've done the right thing. The unit cost of labour is one of a number of factors that really drives what the labour bill is. The two bigger factors, in my experience, are actually the capability of that labour and how well we utilise the labour that we're applying in our business. So what do I mean by capability? There's vast differences in performance of seasonal workforce, using data from a number of different clients, returning field staff, picking type staff, anywhere between 30 and 45% more productive when they've been trained and supervised correctly than new workers. So we could haggle over 2, 3, 4, 5, 6% on the unit cost and not pay attention to the fact that it's really going to drive what the wage bill is, and that's capability. And then how we use it. So how smart's the task? How well maintained is the equipment? How much of the labour's time's actually spent doing the particular thing that adds value to our process versus walking between stations, waiting for product to come down a line, So there's a lot of opportunity and things that are within an agribusiness's control when consumer demand and input costs and those sorts of things are well out of our control. I think any agricultural business, horticulture or otherwise, would tell you that the permanent labour market at the moment is brutal. Ability to find a candidate, let alone the right candidate, willingness to go to some of the locations where the businesses are operated, expectations in terms of pay, work-life balance, all of these things have shifted a lot in the last 4 or 5 years. I make the point around there being specific roles within intensive horticultural businesses where the value does get generated, where the performance of key individuals can have a dramatic effect on the commercial viability of the business. Production, primary production related expertise is right at the top of that. There's no compromising on whether you get the right capability into those jobs, because if we've got a poor primary production outcome, then all the waste, all the poor crop performance is going to flow all the way through the operation. So harvest costs are higher, packing, production, processing costs are higher, risk of rejections are higher. So if the imperative is to get the right talent into the seat, then we need to look really broadly at how we go about finding those people. And if that means going offshore and using skill migration type services, then absolutely we've got to look at it. So why do people come to Australia? As frustrated as we might be at times about our operating environment, for any of us that have travelled and have a genuine understanding about where Australia sits in the world, it's still the best place in the world to live. Little bit of Aussie bias there, but from a safety, sovereignty, lifestyle, health outcome, industrial relations, system protections, all of those sorts of things, to virtually anywhere else in the world, Australia's paradise. So do people aspire to move here? Without a doubt. It's then going beyond that and, okay, how do we go about finding the right skill with the right experience and an attitude that's going to fit with a regionally based business, and how do we navigate the industrial relations migration process, which to the uninitiated can look like a lot of muck and mystery. A number of things to think about when trying to get inside the head of an agribusiness when they're procuring anything, and particularly labour, given how significant a part of its production cost that it is. The old-fashioned way of putting two quotes on the table in front of ourselves and judging them and saying, okay, glyphosate price for them and them, glyphosate's glyphosate, and I'll take the lowest cost. The situation has, I guess, got so intense now in terms of profitability and margin pressure that we've got to get well beyond that simplistic look. Now, if we look at labour sources and the dramatic change that we've gone through pre-pandemic, lots of backpackers here, piece rate regime in place, much less prevalence of SEDEX compliance requirements and so on. in some ways, we're probably looking at it as the good old days. Now that industrial relations piece has shifted. It's gone, and so now we still got those businesses, as hard as we try with automation, mechanisation, different application of technology to try and remove the labour from the systems. The labour remains, and getting beyond a simplistic view of what value looks like. Um, a lot of the businesses are quite skinny on a human resource management perspective. Some businesses have reached outside agriculture to find HR experts, and they come to agriculture with very good IR experience, very good workplace and healthy experience. But when you get to seasonal workforce, that's an animal that's pretty unique to agriculture. So that there's a gap in expertise and understanding. And then other businesses haven't brought those experts in. So the procurement's being done by a general manager or operations type people. So there is an education piece. And again, acknowledging it, there's plenty of complexity in here. People say, oh, well, go for palm, return workers. That all sounds good. The compliance cost is high. The bureaucracy around the program is high. Is it painful? It's really, really painful, right? And we've seen the numbers of palm workers being used in Australia drop from a peak of about 38,000 to 31 as we record this, and that's businesses electing not to use it because it's too hard. I don't expect the meat industries actually reduce their use of the program, so that drop is probably almost entirely horticulture related. Now there are businesses that have applied the time and attention to, we've got to build a new set of skills to run a palm workforce. It's not backpacker. It's not. It's a different beast altogether. Now, where they've invested the time, the welfare piece, the training, the supervision, all of those pieces, they get second year, third year, fourth year into that program, and they're really starting to see the value of that returning workforce. The training burden drops, the depth of supervision increases, the work health and safety issues drop because they're weeding out the people that won't follow those rules. So it's not simple by any means, but we have got to skill up. Whichever government is in place in Australia, and I don't pretend to understand the detail of either party's industrial relations agenda. The migration stuff's been a very lively part of the debate. The broader context that we're in with China's influence in the region, palm's here to stay, right? It's a key part of our engagement with the Pacific, so it's an element of the solution. Labor has made noises about doing away with the 88 days entirely. Now, if they do that, well, that doesn't mean backpackers aren't available to agriculture. It does mean one of the hooks that's been there is weaker. We'll be able to attract backpackers so long as we offer the right job, right? So is the pay rate right? Are the hours right? Is the duration of the job right? Is the environment right? Do they feel safe? Are they safe? Is the workplace safe? All of those things will still get backpackers working in agriculture. I guess working purely with businesses and spending no time in the lobbying sort of industry type space as I do now, I guess that what I'm employing businesses to do is to focus on what they can control. And that's those three things that we were talking about before, how focused they are on the productivity of their crop, how cleverly they think about getting the right talent into the most critical jobs, how well they run their seasonal workforce, and how methodical they are about continually improving what they do. Look, the P in PSVC Advisory, my business's name stands for people. So you could be forgiven for thinking that all he does is talk about people. I do talk about people a lot. The reality of mechanisation, technology, AI, the pressure that businesses have been under will have constrained some businesses' investment or ongoing investment in those things. Some businesses will have bitten the bullet and borrowed more in order to keep up with the rate of adoption that they think is appropriate for their business. There's no substitute for finding, trialing, implementing the right mechanisation, automation, technology, AI. When they invented the wheel, ag would have been one of the first ones to grab it, and they've been really good adopters of technology ever since, and we have to keep chasing that. I guess the message that I make around mechanisation, technology, AI, ag tech, as it's often referred to, I find the term quite amusing because we've been adopting ag technology in ag for millennia. But anyway, it's a bit of jargon that's out there. Is that you got to do both. Those investments aren't in and of themselves a silver bullet, because even if they do mean we use less people, we are going to need to use people with that technology, and there's every chance they're going to need a different set of skills. So our energy and effort and investment in the workforce piece has got to keep pace with our investment in mechanisation, technology, AI. I guess if we talk about perm and seasonal separately for a minute, quite often the conversation will start with, well, we need blah. Someone's got to, there's enough pain somewhere that we need an individual. I will try and take the conversation back to, so what's the overarching strategy? How are we trying to compete? Is it on quality? Is it on price point? Is it on what specifically is the business's point of difference? How are we trying to win in the market? Therefore, what are the critical positions? So trying to be consistent here. And in the job that we're talking about right now, is it one of these mission critical, must get right, must have an A player in it, or is it what you might refer to as a B or a C? Still, all the people being important, but is it sufficient for us to have competent and capable, or do we need an out and out winner? So it's understanding that context first. Talking to them about what the selection criteria is. So this is not a position description, which can get very long and very wordy. It's, you got 10 criteria that you can apply to this role. What are the 10 criteria? And then once we've worked through what those 10 criteria might be, it's putting real pressure on the business to tell me what's the one most important thing. Because all the perfect individuals out there. They're really, really hard to find. So now we've got to start to be crystal clear around what are the traits, capabilities, experience that is a deal breaker. So I use a scoring system's pretty simplistic. You got 10 criteria, you can only rate one as the 10. And you get 2 9s and 2 8s and 2 7s and 2 6s. Pretty simple matrix, but it forces people to choose. So then when we get into the recruitment process, they've actually got a framework. Oh, yeah, no, I really like this. Yeah, but what you said was this is the most important thing, and it's directly connected to the strategy. Yeah. So that's a bit on the permanent side. On the seasonal workforce side, again, try and start with what's the agricultural plan. Forget the HR bit. Forget who the providers are. I don't want to talk about that. What's the growing program? When's the activity need to happen? What does that rhythm of the workforce need to look like? You got crops like table grapes where we need to do a lot of work in a tight window and then nothing, and then a lot of work in a tight window and nothing. That starts to tell you a lot about what sort of workforce composition you're going to need, because we've got to match the labour to the agriculture, not the other way around, right? What's easy for supplying the labour versus what's the agriculture need? Why are we here? We're here to run the agriculture. Yeah. So dig quite deeply into what the production plan is, packing the whole piece, and get very granular with what the tasks are, and slowly but surely build up a very detailed labour demand picture. And depending on what the rhythm of that labour demand picture looks like, it's going to start to talk to us about, so is it a pure palm workforce? Is it a split palm backpacker workforce? How do we match it? Because the minute we don't have the capacity we need when we need it, we start running behind, or we've got people standing around doing nothing. We run behind, the agriculture gets in trouble. We've got people standing around doing nothing. The welfare issues blow up pretty fast. So it's back to those first principles. What's the system we're trying to run? There's a few different takes on how the backpacker numbers have rebounded in Australia and what the labour situation, supply situation looks like. The statistics say that the backpackers are back in the country. The industrial relations rules and so on around 88 days and so on mean that there's less need for some backpackers to come to agriculture in order to stay for longer. So that piece is weaker. So are there available people in the country? Yes, there's more available people off the crazy tight situation that we got into at the back end of the pandemic, in particular, different supply situation. That's a person. So are they there to put in a seat? Yes, they're there to put in a seat. The situation, though, that the businesses are in goes beyond that. Can they find a person? Yes, they can. Now it's about, can they get them to perform? And that's a different question. And in terms of an evolution of the businesses, the piece rate mechanism used to do a lot. It used to drive productivity performance. Otherwise, people weren't making the hourly rate that they wanted, and it drove quality. If the job you're doing is not the right performance, well, we're not paying you either. The days of that are gone. There's a baseline minimum hourly rate. So you've got a body and the clock's going, you're paying. The emphasis now is on output. So capability, utilisation, right? Now, how well trained, supervised, measured, performance managed labour is, whether it's direct hire or whether it's come through a labour hire company, agribusinesses might not like me saying this, it's your job. It's your job. It's not the labour hire company's job. It's your job. It's your crop. It's your process. It's your line. It's your safety record. It's your job. I don't have the trainers or I don't have the supervisors. Work it out. It's your job. We've got to get this capability of that workforce up, regardless of who their ultimate employer is. Who's the beneficiary? Us. We're going to get the capability up. Then we get to utilisation. Only the agribusiness can design the job. No one else can help you. What you put them to work on, how good the patch is that they go in to pick, how accessible the fruit is, how well the tools are organised, how much walking they do from that back to a grading chariot or so on. That is all on us. It's not industrial relations. It's not the palm department. It's not the labour hire company. It's the agribusiness, all within our control. So yes, have the numbers returned. Yep. Can we find a body? Yep. That's not enough. We've got to get them to, we've got to get the output. I've had a view that at an industry level, while we've supported lobbying and so on, as we absolutely should, about what the shape of things like the PALM program are, we've underinvested to a huge degree in workforce capability development. Horticulture's challenging. Every crop's different. Every job's different. Can we create a central course that trains everyone to do everything so that they're now capable of going onto a horticultural operation and being more useful than they might have been? No. Could we invest in training businesses to be better at training and supervision and to be able to customize that for their own workplace? I think it's a massive investment gap. Massive.